it's the Aries fire part where like, no, like I'm lit on fire and there's no putting this out. Like I need the spray paint. I need to make this. And there's nobody going to tell me that, well, but you don't know how and you're just an amateur and like, what makes you think you could do it? Like, no, it can be shitty. I'm not saying it's got to be perfect, but I am going to do the thing. So when the impulse has you, when that fire catches onto you and is like, you can do this, you want to do this, the desire is strong, the fire catches, let the impulse take you with it and trust in the wings that you haven't seen yet. Hello, and welcome back to another installation of Contemplating this Aries North Node. And I am recording this on September 9th, 2023. I say that it's also the 9/9 portal or whatever. Anyways, I say that because I would be very curious about if anything wild was going on in your life at this time. At the time of recording this, we have the sun making a trine to Jupiter retrograde. So the two earth signs are hooked up. It's also this weekend that we have the moon squaring Mars and then the south node both in Libra. So Cancer squaring Libra are two cardinal signs, plus that moon of our like emotions and Mars of our actions coming together to make some really impulsive actions. And that's what I want to talk about, is like when the impulse scoops you up and says, guess what, you're coming with me, and there's just no more discussion about it. I have a really fun story that happened yesterday and all unfolded in the span of like 2 hours. It was so crazy and out of nowhere. My brother texted me and was like, hey, do you still paint? And me and my brother, like, it's not that we don't like each other by any means, but like we don't have like a relationship really where we text each other random questions after weeks of not talking. And so I was like, not really. It's been a couple years. And he was like, well, I'm wanting a piece of art or maybe multiple for my house. And before I bought something, I thought I would ask the artist I know. And I was like, so sweet. And obviously I would pay you. And I'm like, you let me know when you're home and I'll come over and we can talk more about it. And I also have some homemade ice cream to bring you. So he basically was like, well, I just got home, so you can come now if you want. And so I loaded up the ice cream and I went over there, and for about half an hour, we stood and looked at this gigantic blank space of a wall that he has there in his like main room where it's like the kitchen and the living room. And this wall that we're looking at is one whole side of the house, and it's 60 feet. And it's probably, I'm going to say like 20 feet tall at the top point, and then has a peak that comes down from there. And it's up there that he wants something. And it's just like this 60-foot wall. If you put something, even a 5x5 or something like that, it just gets swallowed up on this giant wall. So it needs to be something like really sizable. And the first thing I think of is, well, let me back up a step, because as I'm packing up the ice cream, that's like a character in the story, right? Like as I'm packing up the ice cream, I get this image of like galaxy, space, planets. And like, that's my domain. I'm like looking around out there in the spaciness of it, like the vastness, infiniteness of it. I love it so much. All of it. That was my first thought. And then instantly was like, this is not a piece of art that you are creating. This is a piece of art that he is commissioning. So, like, let's shelve your galaxy thing for a second and let's hear what he wants and let's go from there. And so I get over there and we're looking at this space, and I was like, well, he asked me, he's like, so what are we going to do? And I'm like, well, what do you want to do? And he's like, I really don't know. But I was like, oh, okay. Well, since you don't have an idea, the first idea that came to my mind is like galaxy, like space, planets, whatever. I painted him a picture and he's like, I can see it. I can totally see it. I love that. And he's super into space too. So anyways, aliens more than like astrology or anything like that. He's always like drawn aliens and stuff. So anyways, that's probably why that came first to mind. But he was totally on board, and now we're talking about it needs to be really big. And I think back to when I first started painting, or when I first started pour painting, I should say, that was, gosh, like the fall of 2019. And I think, was it the fall of 2018? It had to be the fall of 2018. Okay, so when I started pour painting in the fall of 2018, it was right after that, right after I started pour painting, which is like acrylic fluid art. I don't know, I'll put some pictures on the screen. And I went on a vacation, on a solo trip, where I was going to stay for 4 days in a little cabin by myself. And on my way there, I stopped and I bought this piece of fabric that you could turn into canvas. It was like the heavy duty stuff that needed the gesso or whatever put on top of it, and then you could paint on it. And I thought I was going to make like a giant pour painting on this giant cloth. It's like 4 by 8, I think, 4 feet by 8 feet. And I was going to put it in my own house, like in this blank spot that I had. And so anyways, that canvas is fucking huge. And as I started pour painting, like I realized like it would take so much paint to make this canvas. Like I never did it. And that piece of cloth has been folded up in my closet since then. So that would be almost 5 years ago that 4 by 8 piece of cloth, like I gessoed half of it and then folded it up and put it in my closet, and it's been in there ever since. So now I'm standing in my brother's house and we're talking about a piece of art that he wants to fund. And now he's like, it needs to be really sizable. And I was like, well, I tell you what I do have is this piece of cloth that's 4 by 8 or whatever. And I also have a canvas that was given to me that's 4 by 4. So we could take the 4 by 8 cloth, put the 4 by 4 on this side, and get another 4 by 4 and put that on this side. And like put it all together and paint it as like one piece. And he's like, okay, so yeah, that would start to maybe make something of a statement piece on this gigantic wall, even though that's still only 4 by 16. So like, that's not even that big necessarily. But we could eventually do some other stuff around it if we wanted to. But this whole conversation of standing in his house looking at this blank wall, both of us like seeing it, my brother Sam making so much fun of us because he's like, oh, you can see it. Like he's the least intuitive person you ever met, in a visual kind of context. Gets a lot of gut feelings, but like this whole vision thing, like no, he doesn't understand that for a second. But me and my other brother, we were like, okay, yeah, we can both see it. So I'm like, okay, so let me go home and make up some like Canva images, some graphic design versions of like what I have in my head, and then we can both be looking at the same thing for real and see if that's close to what you're envisioning. And so I come home, again, super fast, like within an hour, I have 9 designs to send him, which if you're familiar with Canva, you know how easy that is to just like pile some stuff in a thing and like, here you go, what about this? Because I wanted his reaction. If he was going to be like, no, this is like not even a little bit what I thought you were talking about. I thought it was going to be like this, like, great, I've only spent an hour. And so I send him the package of 9 designs to look at and react to. And he replies, he's like, I really like this one. And I'm going to show you here on the screen the one that he picked. It was the 3rd design I did. And the first thing he says, which I totally adore because it's a great question. He's like, you really think you can paint this? And I was like, I had to really stop and think about that. I looked at it again and I looked at it again. Like, what is this? What am I signing up for here? And I was like, I think I can get in the ballpark. I think I can put something on canvas that looks pretty much like this. Yes. And that felt really, really, really interesting and very much in the vein of the Aries North Node when the impulse comes that says, do the thing, dive off the cliff. And it's like, I can't fly. And it's like, yes, you can. Of course you can. And you're like, no, I've never seen myself fly. It's like, but you can fly. So you need to jump off the cliff. And then you jump off the cliff and you're like, wings pop out. and you're like, oh my God, I can fucking fly. And like, that's what it feels like it's shaping up to be, because I have no track record of ever creating anything to this scale. Like 4 feet is the longest canvas I ever did, and that canvas was only 2 feet wide. So like, that's the biggest canvas I've ever painted on. And so like, let's blow that up 5 times and change the medium, because we're not going to do pour painting. We're going to do spray painting. Never have I done spray paint art. I've seen it done, and it's like freaking cool. And I have so much respect for the people who do that. And it's not that like back when I watched it done, like that I thought, oh, I could never do that. But I also was like, no, that's a whole skill. That's like a whole thing all by itself. Like, just never really had the reason or the spark to go there. To try this whole new medium. And it's so interesting because it was about this time in 2018, it was like October in 2018, when I found pour painting for the first time. And the circumstances that brought me to that were not me venturing into it by myself anyway. Same kind of thing as what's happening here. It's so weird. I wonder if any of you guys have anything like this that feels similar to this, where like back in 2018, the reason that I came to pour painting was there was this local shop in town where she sold like home decor basically, and a little bit of like purses and jewelry and stuff like that. And she also hosted classes. She also flipped houses with her husband, and like, she was just doing all these things. And the lady who owned this little shop. And so one of the things that she had done was like flip this house with her husband, and they were having an open house. And she asked local businesses around the area if they would donate to her open house as like a taste of Whorton. And she would have little signs on everything about where everything came from, and we would give it to her. And hopefully that would help draw even more people to come to her open house. And so I ended up donating from our grocery store a couple of like veggie tray and like summer sausage tray kind of thing, like probably like $60 worth of trays that we gave, maybe 100. But I figured like Taste of Whorton, at that point the grocery store had only been open 6 months. A lot of people still didn't even know we existed. And so I was like, great opportunity, here you go, wonderful job. Way to put it together. And I even went to her little Taste of Whorton event because I was like, oh, like so cute, and like, you know, met a couple people. It was fun. And anyway, so she came into the grocery store shortly after that and was like, I really want to thank you for your donation, and I want to offer you a free seat in this upcoming art class I have going on. Like, you should totally come, and like, you don't have to pay, like, I'll just, you know, provide your materials. I think you would really enjoy it. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so generous of you. Thank you so much. And so I went to the art class, and it was pour painting on these like plastic pumpkins or whatever. And my pumpkin at the end of it looked absolutely fucking hideous. But they had us ourselves, like, you know, add in the Floetrol that you add to the paint to like thin it down so that you can pour it, and like stir it with the little stick or whatever. And then like make your little pour cup, and you layer your colors together, and then you pour it out, and like you watch it run, and you tilt it so it runs in a certain way. Like I said, it was absolutely hideous that very first time I tried it, but it was addicting. And I probably painted, I'm going to say over 200 canvases in the 2 years that followed that. Because I just couldn't not, because it was like just the funnest thing I could ever do. And actually, this is one of my favorites. Let me see if I can take you on a little tour here with my very short. So like, that's one example. Actually, there's another one poking out behind it. Hello, Lolo. That's like Space Being. Looks like a little spermy also. But that's pour painting. And you just like layer the colors together and then pour it on the canvas and tilt it to get the colors to run. And the way you put the Floetrol in is how the colors show up and show through each other and all of that. I know, you're a obnoxious kitty. So, but it's so cool how like she didn't even tell me that's what we were going to do. She just said art class. And so I went, and ipso facto, I found this passion that I didn't know that I had that. And so it's really interesting too how that led into, like I ended up using a lot of that artwork as I got into self-publishing, and I would take pictures of those pour paintings and then use them to design covers for journals and stuff. So all of that came out of, I donated the trays, she comped me an art class ticket, and like my life got changed. I spent hours and hours and hours and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars, sold very few paintings, but the ones I did sell were like super gratifying, like that someone would want this enough to want to give me money for it. Like that feels really nice. And even in this instance now with my brother commissioning this art, and like me having this like completely naive sense of, oh, I could totally do that. And it's like, dude, you don't know that. I could get in the ballpark. I could probably get pretty close. And so all of that to say that, of course, like after he picked that design, I started looking at the image and was like, what colors of spray paint am I gonna need? And then I went to Home Depot last night and bought $120 worth of spray paint. I'm gonna finish gessoing my cloth. I've been watching YouTube videos about how to spray paint planets and like get them to look like planets, how to do the rings on planets, how to do like shooting stars kind of thing. Like, dude, it's all out there. It's like right at your freaking fingertips. And so I feel like this is like the closest I've come yet to having that Aries impulse, that Aries spark and fire, like take me over to where you're not, again, like this is what we talked about with like the Libra South Node, and like, you know that you're headed for the Libra South Node when you're trying to make a decision, when you're like stuck in indecisiveness and like, I can't figure out which way to go. It's like neither one of those is right. Neither one of these choices is the right choice. There's a better choice, because if you had the right choice, you'd be on your way to Home Depot right now. Like the impulse would be carrying you to the next part. Like that's how good it feels when it's right. And that is what I want to say about like this Aries North Node, and like let the impulse carry you. Let it have its way with you, you know? Have some freaking confidence where you have no right to have confidence. Like have the guts to pick up a can of spray paint. Like my hand just keeps doing this. Like it's like, I need some spray paint. I need some spray paint in my hand right now. And that's what took me to Home Depot last night, was like, I need to get the spray paint. I need to get this. Like I need to start going. I want to spray something. Like it's so almost like manic a little bit. Like you could probably tell, like I'm very pumped about this project. And the other piece that I want to stick in here, because you know, as I always do, I want to share my own personal reflections so that you can take this version and possibly like translate it into, or at least open up a contemplation, open up a line of inquiry around like that subject for yourself. Like I say on the channel a lot, you know, yes, we are collectively evolving under this Aries North Node, Libra South Node archetype, but we are all each individually on our own North Node, South Node journey as a whole. And each of these chapters along the way is just a little bit closer to your ultimate destination, right? So it really isn't like every time the North Node changes, like we're doing something completely different. Not really. You're getting towards your ultimate destination in a little bit different way. And then in a little bit different way, it's kind of like the image I just saw is like, if there's like a heavy mirror that's too heavy for you to lift, like if you're a big, strong person, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about, but like where you like walk it, you know, like you pick it up and like move this side and pick it up and move this side. And it's like leverage to like, you don't have to get there in a straight line. You could like do it a little bit like this, Aries North Node. Then you could do it a little bit like this, Pisces North Node, you know? And it just like keeps going. And what you're walking towards is your own North Node. So when the impulse is taking you and, you know, it gets you in the fire. Like that's basically where I feel like I am. It's like the impulse got me in the fire. Like I bit off the thing. I said, I'm making this. I'm going to get in the ballpark of this painting. This 4-foot by 16-foot painting that exists on 3 giant canvas surfaces. Like, yeah, totally. Sign me up. I could totally do that. And so now here I am, properly overwhelmed. Okay. I think that's part of this Aries North Node. Follow the impulse, let it have its way with you, get in the fire. And the first emotion you're probably going to feel, this is what came first for me anyway, after this was all yesterday and I woke up this morning feeling very overwhelmed, like very overwhelmed. Like, wait, what? Like this was like a fever dream that like I wake up and I'm like, no, I have $120 worth of spray paint and a design saying, yep, I can get in the ballpark of this. Okay, that really happened. How am I going to do this? Like, where do I begin? And this is the interesting part, because I think that overwhelm that the Aries North Node is going to give you when you dive head first into the impulse, the overwhelm is needed, because that's when you're going to see your own kind of North Node, South Node journey pop out of this experience like a hologram, where when we are overwhelmed, we will naturally revert to our South Node. That'll be how you want to handle the overwhelm, is let me get my South Node on this job. That's, oh God, you should see him handle overwhelm. Like you just do like this and like this and like this. Basically, like when we are overwhelmed, when our system is overwhelmed, when our mind is overwhelmed, we revert back to our muscle memory. We revert back to the patterns that are established the best. And what I'm seeing, so my Virgo South Node, so cute, wants to make a 200-point plan of like, first you should do this part, and then 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 make sure you do this part after this, this, and this, so that those lines can like overlap onto the, like it's wanting to make a plan from like start to finish of like, how am I going to do this and like get to where I want to go. And my Pisces North Node is like, give me the can of spray paint. I think I can do it. Like, I really think I can do this. Like, so basically my strategy keeps bouncing back and forth between make a gigantor list of like all the steps of like what you think you need to do. And on the Pisces, like Jupiter ruled Pisces side of like expansiveness and trust in good outcomes, faith, optimism, like that Jupiter ruled Pisces sign of go with the flow, dive in and see where it takes you. Like, what if what your flow would create is even better than what you can see on the image that you're trying to reverse engineer with your plan? You know, like what if the flow unlocks into transcendence, and that you get into a state where you are able to bring through even greater beauty than if you follow your plan and try to hit this bullseye exactly on like, I need to make it look like this, you know? So I feel in this overwhelm, my natural instinct is very much Virgo South Node. Like when you're overwhelmed, just make a list. You know, just Swiss cheese that baby. Just like write down all the pieces and then you just like check them off one at a time. Easy peasy, no big deal. This is for fun. Like, I don't want to make a list. I don't, like, to some extent, sure, like I'm getting a game plan of like, first we need to do the planets and then we need to have this piece to cover the planets so that I can work on the background. Like, I mean, I have a general structure framework of like maybe 3 or 4 steps of a plan, but not 200, right? Like, let me get 3 or 4 steps and then let me dive in and swim around step number 1 and see what it turns into. And maybe that means I go on to step number 2 and swim around that one. Maybe step number 1 and flowing with it negates the rest of this. Like, who knows? Who knows what the flow will give you if you're allowing yourself to go with it? And the part that, you know, for me with this whole like Aries North Node, following the impulse, now I'm overwhelmed. I may be bit off more than I can chew, but that's what overwhelm is. And like, okay, I'm here now and I want to do this. I'm like fired up about it. It's just a matter of how am I going to relate to it? Am I going to relate to it through my Virgo South Node? of managing that sucker, like getting a list with some check boxes that I can check off as I go? Or am I going to relate to it through a divine timing sense, cooperative components coming together? Like it just like, I feel magnetized in that direction, even just in the randomness of like it being him of all people. That's freaking weird. Like I said, like we're not best friends by any means. And for him to, he plays video games, like for him to want art, like for his house, like he doesn't even look out of his screen. Like it's just so bizarre. Like the fact that he is bringing me this request, he wants to pay for supplies. He wants, like his energy is pushing this stream along and in a very, very delicious way. And so it's like, just how am I going to relate to it? It's not getting out of the stream. That's again where I go back to Aries North Node, Libra South Node, like Libra South Node indecisiveness. Like if you could leave the stream, you're not in the right fucking stream. Like get in the stream where you couldn't be pried out of the stream. Like I may make some really shitty planets and space art, but I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna do it because like I just can't not at this point. Like I need the spray paint in my hand. Like my hand just keeps doing this. It wants spray paint. And even just making this video, it's like, even this feels like the Virgo South Node side of like Mercury analyzing it, understanding it, getting my head wrapped around the details of it. So like, you know, even when we are overwhelmed and we do revert back to the South Node patterns of our own unique nodal journey, like, again, those are there to kind of support you, right? Like it's a foundation of sorts. And if we stay too long, it can kind of become quicksand where it really pulls us down. But it can be a foundation, a starting place of like, you know, like yesterday when my first thought, this was like still when I was in the sweep of the impulse, was like, my very first thought was, look at this and I need to make a list of like, what colors do I see? That was the only way I could think to do it. Of course, I could have taken the picture, and this is actually what ended up happening, is like more I looked at the picture once I got to Home Depot and I was like, oh, I need that one. I need that one. I need that one. I need that one. I didn't need to make a list. But for me to feel comfortable to go to Home Depot, I did need to make the list. So like it can be supportive to like let ourselves kind of have a little bit of the comfort from our South Node and use that comfort to get ourselves to move forward, right? Like get yourself comfortable enough that you will move forward, and then watch how your North Node, like maybe the reason you got pushed into the overwhelm is that your North Node can do this, right? So like the next time you're in over your head, that's what I want you to think about, is like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Oh my God, I've never seen myself do anything like this. Right. Because this is your next level of expansion. And if you would let go and let yourself do what comes naturally to you, what your body says that you're capable of doing, like if it's in the stream and won't come out, like you can do it. You could totally do it. Now, if you could walk away, this probably isn't the right growth territory for you. That's my own personal opinion. If you could walk away, you probably should. That's, again, just my own personal opinion. It's the Aries fire part where like, no, like I'm lit on fire and there's no putting this out. Like I need the spray paint. I need to make this. And there's nobody going to tell me that, you know, well, but you don't know how and you're just an amateur and like, what makes you think you could do it? Like, no, it can be shitty. I'm not saying it's got to be perfect, but I am going to do the thing. So when the impulse has you, when that fire catches onto you and is like, you can do this, you want to do this, the desire is strong, the fire catches, let the impulse take you with it and trust in the wings that you haven't seen yet. Dear friends, thank you so much for hanging out with me again. It has literally been my pleasure to relay this expression to you, this contemplation. Always my pleasure. Until next time, do take such good care of yourselves and follow those impulses that want to have their way with you. And so will I.